Hey everybody, welcome back to the Boston-Raleigh channel. We're doing part 2 of the Revolutionary War by Oversimplified History. We did part 1 on Monday. We're doing part 2 now that it's Friday. Tomorrow's Independence Day. We're going to cover the rest of the Revolutionary War. Basically, the first video went through almost everything that Epic History had covered in their series, their 5-part series of the Revolutionary War thus far. This is a small 30-minute watch on your own if you want to. Two parts this. You can easily just watch all this, or you can watch my commentary. Let's go.
This video was made possible by Brilliant, math and science done right. Keep watching until the end of the video to learn how you can get 20% off the annual premium subscription.
Part 2, let's go! Let's go. It's so wild because I needed the closure very desperately. We went through so much war stuff in Epic History, and I love their stuff, but they did not finish pretty much about a third-ish of the Revolutionary War. Did not get finished in Epic History's series. So we're gonna watch part 2. We're gonna get the closure that we all wanted right before actual Independence Day, the 250th anniversary. Definitely be sure to go like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications for 250. Can we get to 250 subs by the end of the year? I don't know, maybe.
Washington's butt was sufficiently kicked. Winter was here. His troops' morale was low, some just up and left. Washington needed to do something, anything to restore faith in the revolution. The British had spread throughout New Jersey and settled in for a winter of drinking cider and partying hard. Nobody expected an attack in the winter, so Washington started making plans for an attack in the winter. The British had hired a large force of Hessian mercenaries from the German states of Hesse-Kassel and Hesse-Hanau to fight the rebels. It was these mercenaries that were stationed across the Delaware River from Washington and his army. And there were more.
You know, it is actually worth noting, nobody expects to fight in the winter. That's not entirely true. It's just that usually armies will hunker down for the cold. People don't usually like to trudge in the snow and the cold. And at this point, this was December of 1776. I don't think that they were going to not, like, the British were just going to assume, hey, we don't need to really, like, worry too much about getting thrown to pieces. But George Washington decided to go and do just that.
Hessian reinforcements incoming, but they made an unscheduled stop because their commander got thirsty. No, not that kind of thirsty. That kind of thirsty.
Ooh! See, this is this is the details we don't learn about in Epic History.
It was Christmas Eve with a blizzard outside when Washington heard the Hessian defenses were down, and he decided to attack. He made a perilous crossing of the icy Delaware River with 2,400 men and marched 9 miles to Trenton, where he caught the Hessian forces completely off guard. After a short but fierce battle, the Hessians surrendered in droves. It was a much-needed victory that sent a clear message, not only to the British, but to Americans across the colonies. The war was far from lost. General Cornwallis led the British forces south to counterattack the Americans, but in a series of battles, Washington's defensive positioning and flanking maneuvers defeated the British 3 times in 10 days, and the British decided to abandon southern New Jersey for the rest of the winter.
So yeah, it is at this point that Epic History does not have any more content on the Revolutionary War. I am super happy. I mean, it's not like I don't already know what happens. A lot of you might even know what happens, but we'll go into some details, you know.
And then finally set up a winter camp in Morristown, but for the Americans, there was much less partying than the British. Elsewhere, the British had taken Newport, Rhode Island, because it was a good naval base. In the south, they failed to take Charleston, South Carolina, which left British loyalists unsupported and vulnerable to more harassment and even mass expulsion. Congress sent Benjamin Franklin to France on a mission to convince them to join the war, and while the French generally loved any opportunity to hoodwink the Brits, they didn't want to join unless it was a sure win. So for now, Franklin spent his days chilling out and chasing tail. The British...
Yeah, Ben Franklin is a well-known tail chaser out in France. He got along with the French aristocracy so well. It is kind of wild. I also do really love they do make a note here. Well, actually, I think they kind of give you an idea. The French are looking to see. You know, it's got to, like, we're going to wait and see. They're not just going to jump on board the opportunity. America still has to prove something apparently at this point. And you know, I would think that America's already done a pretty good job, but you know, the backers got to see something before they start backing, you know.
Parliament couldn't believe the war wasn't over yet, and the pressure was on to end it, so the British came up with a plan. General Burgoyne in Montreal and General William Howe in New York would advance through the Hudson Valley and meet in the middle, splitting the colonies in two, and thus screwing over the American communication lines. Burgoyne began his movement south, and after taking Fort Ticonderoga quite easily, he then came across heavy American resistance, so he sent Howe a dingle-dongle asking if he'd be showing up anytime soon. Meanwhile, Howe had completely abandoned the plan and gone for all-out personal glory by capturing the American capital, Philadelphia. He defeated Washington and his army at Brandywine Creek by using the old hit him with a decoy and flank him from behind tactic, and Philadelphia was now in British hands, forcing Congress to escape to York. But Burgoyne...
So at this point, the British are really kicking a lot of crap in. They are doing a lot of damage up north, but that is not all they're going to need to do. See, they need to run as fast as they can and get stuff done as fast as they can. They're just not probably going to be able to do that.
He was left on his own to face the ever-increasing American force in Saratoga. American General Horatio Gates teamed up with our old friend Benedict Arnold to deal one final blow to Burgoyne's army. Arnold wanted to take the fight to the British, but Gates wanted to wait for the British to come to them. After a heated debate, Gates, the senior officer, told Arnold to go to his room, but Arnold defied his orders, and at the Battle of Bemis Heights he charged at the British and obliterated them. Great job, Horatio. By the way, what happened to that other guy who was in Saratoga? Who? Benedict Arnold. Never heard of him. Ouch.
Sage! So Sage. Benedict Arnold. He made this country happen. He was a big part of it, regardless of things that may or may not have happened later. He was a great hero at the time. I much appreciate the man.
Hey George, didn't I do a great job? Taking Philadelphia and all? Didn't I? You're fired. Both Burgoyne and Howe returned to Great Britain, leaving...
I mean, that uncoordinated campaign doesn't do it did not do what they needed it to do. They were hoping they could just split the colonies right almost down the middle, and they completely failed to do that. They would have had like a large concession of multitudes, just vast quantities of America, because at the time New England was like almost a third of the country. You just cut them off from the rest of the country, all the lines of supply, all the lines of communication, nothing will happen. And so that would have been a huge boon, and they just didn't make it happen because he wanted to go take Philadelphia. That seems smart because Philadelphia was the capital, but they can just pull the capital back. I mean, this is guerrilla warfare 101. You need to actually make these specific strategies work, and I don't think they did that here.
British General Henry Clinton to take charge of the war. And the war was about to take a nasty turn, because with the victory at Saratoga, the French were finally ready to join the Americans. All right, Benny, we're in. Hey, isn't this kind of funny, because you're a republic trying to overthrow an absolute monarchy, and I'm an absolute monarchy helping you? Like, could you imagine if your revolution inspired my people to revolt against me, and then they imprisoned me and all my family, and they chopped all of our heads off? Could you imagine? That's called foreshadowing.
French Revolution Oversimplified coming 2027. Now, that's actually funny because this video is like 7 years old, at least. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to the French Revolution. We're gonna get there. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. If Oversimplified has a video on it, which I think they do, we're gonna get there. Trust me, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there soon. Cough, cough next week.
For now in America, winter was here once again, which meant yet more disease, more starvation, and even a little mutiny. After losing Philadelphia, Washington's job was again on the line. But suddenly, a Prussian guy with a very fancy name, hired by Benjamin Franklin, showed up out of nowhere and said, "Hey, I'm here to give your men a European military training." And train them he did. They learned how to shoot accurately, how to march in formation, where to poop and where not. Give your men a European military training. And train them
let's
on the line.
get
but suddenly,
the name.
a Prussian guy with a very fancy name.
Yeah, sorry. We'll just call him Steuben. Friedrich Wilhelm August Heinrich Ferdinand Steuben. Call him Steuben. Steuben was a very, very tactical mad lad. He was a closeted homosexual too, I guess, which doesn't really matter because it's not that month anymore. But he did a really good job. There's a lot of this in Valley Forge. They were not doing so hot. But they had to figure out, how to do the military stuff. George Washington had the most military experience of anyone there. But, they have, very competent, very, very, very veteran European military strategists in Europe. So,
Hired by Benjamin Franklin, showed up out of nowhere and said, "Hey, I'm here to give your men a European military training." And train them he did. They learned how to shoot accurately, how to march in
Bang.
formation, where to poop and where not to, and strict punishments were handed out to any who didn't comply. Washington's army came out of the winter in 1778 a new and improved force, ready to take Philadelphia back from the British. In the end, though, they didn't have to. With the French entry into the war, the British ordered General Clinton to evacuate Philadelphia and consolidate all of the British forces in New York. So Washington sent Benedict Arnold to reoccupy and secure the city as he pursued the British through New Jersey on land, eventually finding a good opportunity to attack at Monmouth Courthouse. The battle took place on a sweltering hot summer's day, and as many soldiers died from heat stroke as they did from battle. In the end, after some incompetence/borderline treason from Washington's second in command, it was a draw. And in this war, a draw is kind of a victory for the Americans. Next up, let's talk
That was a lot to unpack, but I don't think we have time to unpack literally everything that happened in that fight.
about this guy. This is John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones is
Yo, John Paul Jones mentioned. Let's go. Let's go.
handsome, Scottish, and absolutely insane. When the war first broke out, everyone was like, how did the colonies expect to stand up to the might of the British Navy with their meager fleet of converted merchantmen? Yep, try telling that to John Paul Jones. This guy sailed to the British Isles, somehow captured a British ship off the coast of Ireland, and brought it back to France. Then he returned, attacking more ships, raiding towns, and evading capture the entire time. These are basically pirate tactics. But hey, if it works, it works. In one
Dude, we need an entire video reacting to John Paul Jones.
incident, he captured a British ship and returned to a Dutch port without an official ensign because his was lost during the battle. That's a big no-no and can have you arrested as a pirate. The Dutch helped him out by quickly creating a design based on Benjamin Franklin's description of what the American flag should look like, and they entered it into their records as an official US flag. What they came up with looks pretty cool. The whole campaign probably played heavily on British morale and brought into question their ability to win the war. And fun fact, he was so cool that one of the towns he raided in 1778 gave him an official honorary pardon in 1999.
Can I actually go back 10 seconds in this video, which is a lifetime apparently? That's actually really cool that he went to the Dutch, right? He went to the Dutch and they were like, "Wait, you're gonna screw up so many of our laws. Let's take a minute. Let's get you a flag. So that way we don't have to put you in jail. Cuz we don't like pirates, but we like your pirating. Cuz you're pirating F's over Britain."
Keep ripping in heaven, John Paul Jones. You're an angel now. What the
Yeah.
Continental Navy was lacking in resources, though, the French entry into the war made up for. The French began with naval skirmishes in the English Channel, and they sent a large fleet to America, although it sustained a lot of damage in a storm off Rhode Island. The Americans were hoping for a bigger commitment from the French, so John Adams went to France to help Benjamin Franklin continue negotiations. Oh,
They had to send both of them out there.
good, you're finally here. Check this out. Hey ladies, I'd like to fly you like a kite, because you're electrifying. Isn't this great? Is this what you've been doing? Yeah, why? We were sent here on a diplomatic mission to secure military support from France, not to philander with the locals. Wait, no, ladies, come back. Worst wingman ever.
You know what's funny to me? The funny thing is that Ben Franklin's way worked much better because that's how you do diplomacy in France. You go canoodling and kerflandering all around with the French aristocracy. That's what you do. You gotta be like really. You gotta be a social butterfly. You gotta go impress people. You gotta go make friends. That's how you did things in late 1700s France. They were a bunch of party animals. That's how it was. That's why they had foreshadowing happen in like a decade.
But the Americans would get some more help. The Dutch provided aid, although they never formed an official alliance. More significantly, though, the Spanish, who had already been providing aid, officially joined the war in June 1779. They would provide support in the Midwest and the Gulf Coast, campaigns that heavily impacted the Native American tribes in those areas. Both sides actually enlisted the help of Native American tribes throughout the war, sometimes even pitting those tribes against each other. In the summer of 1779, after a series of raids against the Americans by the Iroquois, Washington organized an expedition that burned down more than 40 villages, forcing the tribes to relocate to Canada for British protection. And another group that shouldn't go unmentioned were African Americans, both free and enslaved. They joined both sides of the war, hoping to gain their freedom. But afterwards, many were simply returned to slavery, particularly those who had fought for the Americans. Despite owning slaves himself, Jefferson had written a condemnation of slavery in the Declaration of Independence, but out of fear of offending the southern colonies, this was removed from the final draft.
Yeah, I mean that is just kind of a thing. It's like it is not to say that all these Virginians really wanted slavery. It is to say that the people that they represented, many of them in the southern four states, they really didn't want to give up the slavery.
Same reason, the American Army stopped enlisting African American men in 1775, a policy that Washington, a slave owner himself, supported, but they were forced to reverse the policy after the British promised freedom to any slaves who joined them. In general, you stood a better chance of gaining freedom if you fought for the British. However, even those that left with the British after the war suffered mistreatment and discrimination in their new lives outside of America.
What's really ironic actually is that if you were in America about 150 years afterwards, it would be almost like the opposite. The fact that you were here meant that you could have an American life and not some crappy crumdiddlyumptious life in Great Britain, largely in poverty.
Our good friend Benedict Arnold is now in charge of Philadelphia, having a good time, partying down with, and even marrying a member of the Philadelphia elite. The same elite that had partied down with the British when they controlled the city. And suddenly, the people of Philadelphia, including the state governor, started accusing Arnold of having pro-British sentiments. To keep the people happy, Washington wrote a letter rebuking Arnold, calling his conduct imprudent and improper, and that was too many ouchies for Benedict Arnold to handle. He asked Washington to put him in charge of the fort at West Point. Then he contacted the British, offering to hand the plans of the fort over to them and join their side. Our good friend Benedict Arnold is our good friend no more. Luckily,
it's okay though. I mean, all's well that ends well. Cough, cough, hint, hint. I don't know. Actually, no. I think that it's kind of ridiculous, and that at some point you've been just overlooked enough to where you did a whole lot of really good stuff. You've never really received the proper credit for it. I mean, he earned it more than almost every other general, aside from Washington. And it's just at that point, it sucks, because if you turn coat, you've thrown it all away. At least in my eyes.
the treasonous plans were discovered on a captured British officer, but Arnold managed to escape before he was arrested. As a British brigadier general, he would go on to lead raids against American cities, most notably his raid of Richmond, Virginia in 1781. His betrayal shook George Washington, who had once again set up camp at Morristown. His leadership somehow held the Continental Army together through the harshest winter of the war. We're entering 1780, and Parliament was hopping mad that the war still wasn't over. The British debt was soaring, and despite taking parts of Massachusetts in late 1779, the North was in a stalemate, so the British decided to make a major shift in strategy to the south, an economically rich area with a higher level of support for the British, or so.
So it's funny, also, going back to that, it's 3.5 years after the Declaration of Independence, and the war is still going on.
The British thought. A year earlier, they had captured the underdefended city of Savannah, Georgia easily, and a joint American-French counter-siege failed. Now, they laid siege to Charleston, South Carolina. It fell within months, with thousands of American troops surrendering to the British, a costly defeat. The British quickly moved to take control, and they sent stereotypical Hollywood villain with a British accent Bannister the Butcher Tarleton into the backcountry, where he hunted down rebels and destroyed them with ruthless brutality. The British presence also inspired local loyalist militias in the backcountry to rise up against their persecutors. The British...
Unfortunately, we cannot do, to my knowledge, we cannot do a reaction to the movie The Patriot. One, because it's a long enough movie. This would take, me doing a reaction to The Patriot would probably take like several times as many times of videos, you know, several times as many videos as we did for any of the series on this channel, as well as the fact that, you know, it's copyrighted.
Really seemed to be onto something with their new strategy, and the ball was very much in Washington's court. I'm gonna send my most loyal general, Nathaniel Greene, to the south to stop the British. Gonna have to overrule you there, George. We're sending hero of Saratoga and your biggest rival, Horatio Gates. Watch this, George. I'm gonna save the day again. Everybody will love me, and I'm gonna get your job. Here I go. And he got into one battle with Cornwallis, got annihilated, and ran away. Alrighty, let's go with your guy. Nathaniel Greene knew the British outnumbered his own forces and wouldn't be defeated with conventional tactics, so he had to think outside the box. He split his army into two, said, "Hey big boy, look at me," and then they went running in two different directions. Cornwallis sent Tarleton after Morgan, and he caught up with him at Cowpens, where Morgan proceeded to kick Tarleton's butt. Then the two led Cornwallis on a wild chase through North Carolina, his bigger and better equipped army much heavier and slower than Greene's quick and mobile troops. Greene led Cornwallis further and further from his supply line, then crossed the Dan River into Virginia, picked up some reinforcements, and turned back to face the now exhausted British. At the Battle of Guilford Courthouse, the two sides engaged in vicious close combat. Cornwallis, fearing loss, fired his big guns into the chaotic fighting, cutting down many of his own men. Greene retreated, giving Cornwallis the victory, but Cornwallis lost a quarter of his men in the fighting, so it felt much more like a British defeat. At this point, both sides desperately needed something to happen soon to end the fighting. The British were running out of money, while the Americans were again facing mutinies as the men went without pay, or even
The going without pay in the just obscenely bad conditions, I don't know if that can be understated, we got into some of that in the Epic History videos, but this is like, this went on for a while. This was not merely, oh yay, we just kind of we toppled them and we started just winning. This was still a long slog. Talk about a war that goes on for a while. This war was like 5-7 years long, depending on how you define it.
Living needs. Fortunately, the French were now showing up in greater numbers and were ready to fight. After his encounter with Greene, Cornwallis decided the only way to win the South was to first prevent the Southern Continental Army from using Virginia as a supply base. So he abandoned the Carolinas, moving to Wilmington and on to Yorktown, a position the British believed would be easy to supply and support. On his march to Yorktown, he raided many farms, stealing horses and supplies from the locals, but also freeing thousands of slaves, many of whom joined him. The French saw Cornwallis's new position as an opportunity to land a decisive blow.
Yeah, we got Rochambeau over in Rhode Island. Let's go.
On the British. Washington wanted to attack Clinton in New York, but the French said it was a really dumb idea. And to be fair, it was. Instead, Washington sent out fake dispatches to make it look like they would attack Clinton, but secretly their combined force marched all the way down to Virginia. A large French fleet under the command of Comte de Grasse arrived and successfully cleared the British Navy out of the Chesapeake Bay. The combined land and naval forces then laid siege to Cornwallis's army in Yorktown. The American and French forces tightened in around the city, raining artillery down on Cornwallis, who desperately appealed to Clinton for aid, but Clinton was unusually chilled out about the whole thing. Cornwallis held out for nearly a month before he had no choice but to surrender. Over 7,000 British troops were captured, a crushing defeat, and with that, Parliament had reached the end of its rope. The war just...
So there's your war. They had two big, massive armies, fleets, etc., and America just straight up took one of them, and that's the end of that war.
Wasn't worth it, and it needed to end now. The British still held New York, Charleston, and Savannah, but
I mean, they hold Charleston and Savannah as well as New York, but that's not a lot. They kind of just completely they got completely hoodwinked, bamboozled, scambonied by losing all their Yorktown forces. So that's the end of that war.
Between the two sides mostly ceased as peace negotiations opened up in Paris. The resulting treaty in 1783 saw Great Britain remove its troops from American soil, recognize U.S. independence, and cede territory up to the Mississippi River. In return,
actually, let's go back for the map here.
Recognize U.S. independence and cede territory up to the Mississippi River.
So, one thing I really do need to point out about this, it's a lot of land, right? You got not only did you finish out like filling out like Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, but you also get like the Indian territories. You get the 5 urban Midwest states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. You also get a little bit of the rest of the country. You get parts of Alabama and Mississippi. You get Tennessee. You get Kentucky. Kind of wild, all that territory. And then a little bit of the stuff below it is ends up being I think Spanish conquest. And then well, you also get pieces of Minnesota and onward up there, but that's not really all that important. And then you get the Louisiana Purchase, where America like almost doubles in size during the early 1800s, and we might get into a little bit of that. Who knows?
River. In return, the Americans agreed to pay any debt still owed to Britain and gave fair treatment to any colonists who had remained loyal to the crown. The Spanish got Florida, while the French got an economic crisis that led to its own revolution a decade later. Washington retired to his home in Mount Vernon, wishing his men farewell by saying, "I most devoutly wish that your latter days may be as prosperous and happy as your former ones have been glorious and honorable." He hoped to live out the rest of his days in peace. But unfortunately for him, a number of people wanted him to be the first leader of the new country. And by a number of people, I mean literally everyone. The first election campaign in American history was basically a grassroots effort to convince Washington to accept the office. He was sworn in on April 30th, 1789, and
I mean, it was the only real uncontested election that has ever happened in American history, effectively speaking, because no one was going to run against Washington for that first one. Actually, no one was going to run against Washington for either. I think he won in 92 as well.
He himself established many of the standards and limitations of what the American leader should be.
I think he won in 92. I think he won in 92 unopposed as well.
First of all, there was debate on what he should be called. Is he a king? Is he our glorious leader? In the end, they went for a word that at the time was pretty modest. President. Like,
you know,
is he our glorious...
Those are some excellent portraits. Queen Washingtonia and Kim Jong-stonian. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of wild. You know, you think about a president, a dictator, and a monarch. Very, very different things. Very different things.
His leader, in the end, they went for a word that at the time was pretty modest. President, like the president of your local bowling club or office bake sale committee. He set up a cabinet of expert advisors, knowing that no president could know everything, no matter how much of a stable genius they claimed to be. He proposed major legislation to Congress and gave an annual State of the Union address to keep his own power in check. He stated that the U.S. should remain neutral in foreign conflicts, and in the end, he voluntarily gave up his power after just 2 terms. He could have made the presidency anything he wanted, but his careful and cautious actions helped set the precedent of an office that is powerful in its limitations, decisive through its diplomacy, and respected in its humility. And so
the precedent for the president.
United States was born, and everything was perfect. It had no problems, not a single one. Certainly nothing that would, I don't know, cause such an extreme divide that it would lead to a civil war. Anyway, moving on. Quick quiz.
Oh my gosh. Foreshadowing again. I know Epic History has a American Civil War thing. We might get to that at some point too.
Name the most American thing you can think of. Baseball? Bald Eagles? Calling the winner of an America-only sports tournament world champions? Or maybe math and science? Wait.
No, math and science. Yuck. Get that out of here. We're going to do 4th of July. Have yourselves an excellent 4th of July weekend. I hope to see all of you guys coming back. Like, comment, subscribe. Help us get to 250 by the end of the year. Also, just have a really good weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.